Good evening and welcome to the NatWest Powering Our Communities webinar series. I'm Shania Ferdinand and I work on a team within the bank that focuses on supporting enterprise and, most importantly, engaging and connecting with underrepresented communities and helping those communities to access our business support programs. We have a variety of ways that we support small businesses, and one of these being our Business Builder, which helps early stage businesses with digital and event-based learning. Business Builder also offers a digital community from which you can grow your network and learn from your peers. For more established business owners, we also have our 6-month accelerator and fintech accelerator programs, which have been tailored to support businesses to grow and scale, offering mentoring, coaching, and also that invaluable network of peers to connect with. Last year, we launched our Back Her Business program, and we teamed up with Crowdfunder UK to offer female startups the opportunity to raise funds through crowdfunding. Applicants also receive crowdfunding coaching and access to workshops to support you to crowdfund successfully. So if you have a business need and want to know more about ways we may be able to support, then please feel free to get in touch with me. Now on to powering our communities. I'm really excited to be able to welcome you to the first in our series of webinars, which are focused on supporting Black, Asian, and ethnic minority business owners. We're currently living through an unexpectedly turbulent time, and we've been forced to radically adapt our lives, and we know there's even more change to come. Feelings of being overwhelmed and increased stress are natural during uncertain times, and this is especially true for business owners and business leaders. So today I'm extremely pleased and thankful that we're able to hear from incredible experts on mental health and well-being. Before I introduce our first speaker, I just wanted to talk about a bit of housekeeping. Please feel free to use the comment function to connect with each other by sharing who you are, where you're from, and also your business, and to post any questions. And if you do have any questions, please can you type a Q at the beginning so that I know it's a question. After both speakers are finished, I'll read out some of the questions so that they'll be able to answer at the end. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our first speaker. I'm very honoured to introduce Dr. Chichi Ekator, who's the chair of the 52 Medics Steering Group, an initiative of Ascension Trust, and was born out of the desire to build wellness and resilience in communities facing challenges, disadvantage, or requiring support. 52 Medics deliver projects and initiatives that promote health and protect well-being, especially at times of crisis. Professionally, Dr. Chichi Ekator is a GP in London and a GP appraiser for NHS England, with an interest in many areas, including well-being in disadvantaged communities. Dr. Ekator is an examiner at St George's Hospital Medical School and has supported projects to widen participation for entry to medical school. She also advises hospitality and corporate organisations in emerging nations such as Ghana, and has led several medical projects in less resourced countries and communities around the world. So thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Chichi.
Thank you very much, Sania Ferdinand, for that warm introduction. And it's amazing to be here today. I believe that, as a community, as a nation, we have indeed been through extremely turbulent times. And more than ever, it's important that we're here to support each other. So if I can have the first slide up, that would be absolutely fantastic. Thank you. So as Shania said, my name is Dr. Chichi Ekator, and I'm chair of 52 Medics, an initiative of Ascension Trust. I'm also a director of Ascension Trust, a well-known organization that champions initiatives such as Street Pastors, which works internationally and also nationally across the UK to improve lives and affect the lives of the disadvantaged and the vulnerable. So this is at the very heart of what we do at 52 Medics. Next slide, please. So 52 Medics is basically a group of clinicians who have come together and partnered with a growing list of stakeholders to build wellness and resilience in our communities in the light of COVID-19. COVID-19 is no small thing, as we all know. So today we're working with the NatWest Group to address your well-being, to look at your mental health as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a startup from a Black and Asian minority ethnic background. Now, I just want to point out at this stage that it is well recognized that there are distinct and unique identities and challenges facing different communities, different businesses, and different entrepreneurs labeled or referred to as BAME. So for those that you don't know, that's Black, Asian, Minority, Ethnic. Well, that's the aggregate that is widely used at the moment for now. But we do recognize that the challenges that individuals in these categories face are very different, but indeed very disproportionate. So today we hope that we can help you identify your personal vulnerabilities, your well-being threats, and help you to build the resilience and to help you to seek the help that you need at this time. And at 52 Medics, we believe that this is the time for us to plant the seeds to take care of your personal psychological and resilience plan as we move forward, as we navigate this long road of recovery. Next slide, please. So the pandemic is indeed a real mental health emergency. In as much as it is a physical threat, it is a huge human tragedy on all scales. We know that people have lost loved ones. We know that your businesses have been affected. We know that your households have been affected. COVID-19 is a new challenge to all of us. And for some of us, it's a long list of hurdles in our personal lives, in our businesses, in our startups. And there is a huge disparity in terms of those affected. I am also a director of an organization, and I have had to make very difficult decisions about staff, about our well-being, and it's not easy. Next slide, please. So although the rallying cry that we're all in this together might encourage members of society to help to reduce the spread of the virus, it does hide the fact that some groups are much more affected than others. We do not know how long this pandemic will go on for. We don't know how long it will take to control the effects of the pandemic. But it is important for us to remember the Persian saying, the Persian adage, that this too shall pass. So we must embrace the concept of community resilience. That is a sustained ability of a community to use available resources to respond to, withstand, and recover from adverse situations. Now, as an entrepreneur myself, I am convinced that the heart of entrepreneurship is resilience, and we must all seek how we can build this resilience together as a community. So I'm very thankful for NatWest Group for organizing this so that we can think, take questions, and discuss how we can move forward together, because we're all in this together. Next slide, please. So we know that existing inequalities have made the mental health of Black and Asian minority groups worse during the pandemic. A lot of people have experienced a lot of stress in a short space of time. Many quickly face difficult decisions around their own and other people's livelihood, other people's careers and aspirations on a scale that brought much anxiety and feelings of helplessness. As a GP, the demand for mental health support absolutely soared as we climbed up the curve, and it continues to be a real challenge as to how we will meet these needs. So it is so key and so important that as a community, we know what we can do when we need to seek help, and we know who we can fall back onto. So the survey conducted by Mind of over 14,000 adults showed that existing inequalities is likely to widen the disparity, especially the difference affecting those from Black and Asian and ethnic minority groups. So we know that, for instance, a study led by a diversity champion, Professor Bina Kandola, noted that Chinese restaurants and food takeout establishments had abusive notices hung on their windows and doors, affecting businesses even before lockdown. Now, all these incidents can impact mental health and well-being negatively. Next slide, please. We know that general mental health declined rapidly in April during the first month of the pandemic. You know, it was extremely harrowing just to see what people were going through, the isolation, the mental turmoil, and also the uncertainty about their future. Businesses had to close at very short notice with little planning and with little hope for what would come after we open the shutters back up again. Next slide, please. There was further evidence of the effect on those living with young children, showing a much larger increase in distress than others. Households had to start to school their children at home, had to make various adjustments. Different households were disrupted and separated. And we know, and I saw as a clinician on the front line receiving calls and having to deal with patients, how much this was affecting our patients. And I am sure that you can testify in your own life how much this has affected you. Next slide, please. What we also know is that up to 1/3 of people were experiencing clinically significant levels of distress during April. Now, this compared with about 1/5 of people before lockdown. Next slide, please. And what we see is that the pandemic appears to be having a very detrimental effect on young people and also young women in particular. As many as 44% of young women are experiencing clinically significant levels of mental distress, compared with 32% before the pandemic. Next slide, please. So we know that COVID-19 is here with us for an unknown amount of time. We know that this is a marathon. It is not a sprint. We have had to put in measures as a nation, rightly so, to curb the effects of the pandemic, to limit the spread of the pandemic. But what we do know is that as furloughs turn into redundancies, as businesses like yourselves worry about future insecurity and mortgage holidays expire, the socio-economic fallout on mental health inequalities might worsen. And if I may be as bold to say, I think it likely will. So we want to put in measures to support you. And hopefully today you will begin to see ways that you can cope and you can build resilience in your business, for your staff, and for your household. Next slide, please. We should be prepared for the fact that the end of the lockdown might be as hard for us as the start was. In actual fact, it may even be harder. And we fully see what you are going through as a business, as a small or medium or large business, from a Bain background. We know that the steps that you are taking to open up the shutters once more, to return to this marketplace of uncertainty, we completely understand that it is a time of great concern. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk about tips of coping with fear, with anxiety, and with uncertainty. And my colleague going forward after my presentation will talk to you some more about some of the psychological therapeutic things that you can put into place. So research has shown that resilience is much more than the capacity of individuals to cope well under adversity. In actual fact, it's the capacity to cope with the current circumstances by creatively finding new resources that sustain your well-being. So in other words, resilience is a process and it's one that can be learned. So the first thing I want to say is pace yourself. Pace yourself as you launch back into the new norm. Focus on the present and control what can be controlled. The next thing I want to say to you is talk about your feelings. We need each other much more now than ever. And what we do know is that those with strong bonds and connections will be able to draw on these. However, the isolated and disconnected will find the recovery much more difficult. Research tells us that connected, trusting, and cohesive communities where people know and care about each other survive and recover better from those less well connected within households and neighborhoods and other community networks. This is the time for you to focus on yourself. We want you to keep active. We want you to eat well. We want you to drink sensibly. We want you to take care of yourself and your well-being as you begin to rebuild your businesses, as you begin to help the nation recover. We want you to know how important you are to all of us, and we want you to take care of yourself. Next slide, please. So none of us are superhuman. We all get tired. We all get overwhelmed by how we feel or when things go wrong. And we want to say to you today that if things are getting too much for you, if you feel that you absolutely cannot cope, we want you to ask for help. And it may be comforting for you to know that there is absolutely no shame in the matter, because over a third of visits to GPs like myself are about mental health. As a GP, I can suggest to you ways that you and your family can help you. I can refer you to counselors, specialists, or even another part of the health service. But most of all, I want you to knock on my door, knock on your GP's door, knock on the nurse's door. It's really, really important that you do not suffer in silence. Next slide, please. And I want you to know that the very first step that you take, either from this conversation, from this webinar, or next week, or in 2 weeks, to share with someone the problem, the stress, the anxiety, the difficulties that you're going through. Now, that is the most important step, and that is the first step to recovery. So I want you to consider to get help from your GP if you're experiencing difficult feelings that are stopping you getting on with your life, that are having a big impact on you and the people you work with, and it's affecting your mood over several weeks. So if that is you, it's really important that you reflect on the word that we talk about today so that you can get the help that you need. Next step, next slide, please. So let's talk about depression. And I just want you to just, if you have a piece of paper or a notebook, just grab a notebook. I just want to ask you a few questions so that you can help to reflect and see, could this be me? You know, we don't often talk about low mood or depression, and there is a wide spectrum. As a GP, one box does not fit all. I know that, I see that, and there is a different mode of treatment for everybody. But I want to ask you a few key questions. The first thing I want to ask you is, do you have physical symptoms such as persistent fatigue, change in appetite, poor sleep, low libido, recurrent illness, niggling coughs and colds frequently, or frequent tension headaches? These could all be signs of depression. The next question I want to ask you is, do you have emotional signs such as loss of motivation, loss of interest or pleasure in doing things that you previously enjoyed, feelings of failure, self-doubt, guilt, worthlessness, poor concentration or being overly fidgety, feeling detached, and indeed suicidal thoughts? We do not talk about this, but it is so common. And once again, there is no shame in admitting whether you feel that this is something that's affecting you. The next question I want to ask you is, has your behavior changed? Have you withdrawn yourself? Have you isolated yourself from others? Not the physical isolation that we've all had to do as a nation, but have you just drawn away into your own shell? Are you over worrying? Are you procrastinating? And next, are you using food, drugs, or alcohol to cope? Next slide, please. Let's talk about alcohol, addiction, drugs, gambling. Once again, we have been through a really tough time as a nation. You have been through a tough time as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a startup. All of us have had to find ways to cope. Unfortunately, some of us have reached for the alcohol, have reached for the drugs, the gambling, addictive behaviors. This is much more common than you would be, that you would be privy to. But as a GP, I am privy, into lots of people's lives. And I see that this is affecting people tremendously. So this slide has details of some organizations that can actually help you. And I think that right now, as you rebuild your business, as you rebuild your resilience, it's time to take that step to bring real change and action into your life. Next slide, please. I want to say to you that help is available 24 hours a day from clinicians like myself. You've got the NHS Urgent Mental Health Helplines, which is open. You've got accident and emergency. There's 24-hour advice and support for you, your child, your parent, or someone you care for. You could speak to a mental health professional. You can have an assessment. There are also key organizations like Samaritans, like Mind, like Cruise Bereavement Care, and like the Mental Health Foundation. It is so important that you reach out to individuals who can help you at this time. Next slide, please. So I want to once again say to you that 52 Medics, we're here for you. We're about building resilience and wellness in communities facing challenges and requiring support. We are working in partnership with lots of businesses. I'm thankful to NatWest for partnering with us on this initiative. But we want to say thank you. And hopefully today you can ask us lots and lots of questions. I want you to feel free to approach us, myself and my colleague, Dr. Hall, so that we can take your questions today about your psychological and mental health well-being. Thank you very much. I'll now pass back to Shania Ferdinand.
Sorry, I think you saw that. I just realised that I was on mute. I'm so sorry. So what I was saying is thank you so much, Dr. Gigi, for that. Now I would really like to welcome Dr. Delroy Hall, who's a trained psychodynamic psychotherapist. Dr. Hall is a senior counselor and wellbeing practitioner and is developing a private consultancy which offers online training, seminars and webinars, sessions dealing with loss and grief, depression, anxiety and clergy stress. Primarily, Dr. Hall is committed to dealing with human pain while developing trust so people can recover and thrive. He's an active leader in his community and is committed to teaching, training and human development, and has given lectures at Harvard University and Boston College, Massachusetts and Durham University. He also teaches at Leeds Beckett University and was appointed as the club chaplain for Sheffield United Football Club in September 2017. So without further ado, thank you so much, Dr. Delroy.
Okay, thank you, Shania. So thank you, Dr. Gigi, for introducing the work. In fact, some of the work kind of overlaps, kind of dovetails, so it'll go really well for this evening. So could you have the first slide, please? That'd be great. Yeah, that's me. Just when I give introductions, I was informed a few years ago, actually, that I should really introduce myself and say a little bit about me. And I will say a little bit. Sometimes we see letters behind names, but I'm not a natural academic. Didn't get my A-levels at 18, didn't get my degree at 21, didn't go to university till I was 38, failed a load of A-levels. And I suppose I'm just sharing this for those who might be, developing and wondering whether you can pursue your dream in terms of your business and so forth. It is possible. You just got to keep going. So this evening, certainly a great thanks to NatWest and RBS for putting on this event, incredibly important at this particular time. And next, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so really just to say that really at the end of both talks really is that you leave this evening with an idea of developing a practical plan, either self-care, self-compassion or self-love. It's really, really important that we take that responsibility for ourselves. So whilst we are building our business, pursuing the thing that's really important, it is really, really important to ensure that we're looking after ourselves the best we can. Next slide. Okay, picture of a tree. If you can imagine the trunk, you are the trunk bit, and the leaves and the branches are your business. And the question I'd like to ask you, whilst you are doing your business, who are you supporting? Who are you holding up, apart from family and friends, but the business, contractors, customers, so forth? Who are you actually supporting in terms of building up your business? But the real matter is the roots. Who's supporting you? You may be working incredibly long hours, removing yourself from people because it's about the business and you've got to do this, you've got to do that, emails to respond to, so forth. But whilst you're holding all this stuff, who's supporting you? And that's really important. And we'll be looking at that picture a little bit later on. Next slide, please. Right, one of the things that we need to be looking out for during this time, Dr. Cheech has made it very, very clear that this COVID-19 has disrupted us non-end, and we can be so busy, frantic, because the business is important. We may have lost customers and so forth. And one of the things about COVID-19, there's a Chinese counseling psychologist who has said that COVID-19 and lockdown has produced what he calls fluid, F-L-U-I-D, F for fear, L for lostness, U for uncertainty, I for instability, and D for doubt. It's affected us in many, many ways in terms of what the future will look like, what's even happening in the present. So one of the things we have to do with all this that's going on is learning to listen. And what we have to listen to is our bodies. I was doing some work recently for NHS Birmingham, and there's a woman talking about she's been a nurse for 30 years and she's feeling the tiredness in her body and working long hours and feeling in her bones. And she asked me the question if there was any research done on nurses and all this type of stuff. And I said, well, you've got data already. She said, what do you mean? I said, your body is telling you that you need to kind of be stepping back, maybe reducing your hours. So one of the things we have to learn to listen to is our bodies. What is our bodies saying to us during this time? And quite often for the BAME community, as we're now called, we're under a lot more stress than maybe the indigenous population in many, many ways. If you're working and trying to develop a business, that's a lot of stress on your body. So learn to listen to your bodies, and your body might be saying to you, get a bit more sleep, get some rest, start exercising. Okay, next slide. Okay, you can see from this little slide, Dr. Chichi has mentioned it already. There's ways of coping with this stress. I don't know if you heard within at the start of lockdown, food sales went up by 35%, 31%, alcohol sales went up by 35%. People turning to alcohol to help them deal with stress. Just about 2 weeks ago, a few of us as black guys went out for a walk on a massive park in Sheffield. That's where I'm from. And one of the guys was telling me that he'd heard that somebody was working from home. It was only when his wife pointed it out to him while he was working on screen and very tense, he started his second bottle of whiskey, and he didn't even know. He didn't even know he was consuming that amount of alcohol. And he realized then when his wife pointed it out to him that he had to be kind of stepping back. So alcohol is a way of dealing with stress. There's overwork. So what happens sometimes when things are going wrong, sometimes we have to put in some extra hours, but we can't continue working for a long time. It's unsustainable. That kind of just adds to the pressure. There's a binge eating, that we can be eating sometimes not enough, sometimes too much, and sometimes we eat food that's fast and ready and available. And our system once is okay, but long term, no. People do drugs during times of great stress, excessive use online. Also in meetings, we can, as Dr. Chichi has rightly said, that our behavior changes. We start to snap at people, shout at people, because there's a lot of stress in our bodies. And we don't like to talk about it, but sometimes when we're in a lot of stress, we can start illicit relationships. So you see that image there of this guy who's got his arm around his partner, but she secretly is having secret liaisons with somebody else. And that can happen when we're under a lot of stress, that the ways that we behave is really sometimes outside of our character. Stress has major things. It happens on us in various ways. Next slide, please. Okay, these are some ways. Social contact with our friends is really, really important. I mean, away from work, away from the stresses, connecting with people, connecting with family, connecting with friends is really, really important. I've suggested for some groups of people who may be shielding or are very reluctant to go out at the moment, that they connect with some of their friends and they have lunch together, virtual lunches. So maybe there's some of you not able to see some of your friends, call them up. And I don't know, you make a date Friday night, Saturday, and you cook your good food, and you connect with each other on any of the social platforms. You talk about the recipes, talk about how you cooked it. It's a way of keeping connection with people, incredibly important. Instead of obsessing over things you can't change, focus on what you can. A very, very simple exercise. Get a sheet of paper. I've used it with the students I work with at the university and private clients. Get a sheet of paper, a line through the middle. On the bottom half of the paper, write what I can't control. On the top half, what I can control. On the bottom half of the paper, what I can't control. Things like Dr. Cheese have heard me say, Donald Trump, Boris Johnson, Matt Hancock, vaccine, when the next spike's going to be. We can't control all of that. I was sharing something similar recently, and it was a Freudian slip. I said Boris Trump, and everybody burst out laughing, included me. And so you might as well call him Donald Johnson. As somebody said, they're just as bad as each other. We can't control them, but what can we control? Incredibly important. So the things that we can control, the time we get up, the time we go to bed, the time we eat, when we meet our friends, these are all things that we can control. And if you make your list. Once you've made the list, tear off the bottom half, put it in the bin, and focus on the things that you can control, because that will reduce your level of anxiety. And then you'll perhaps be able to think clearly what you might be able to do. You get your business back on track. Exercise, incredibly important. Gyms are closed now, but we can do exercise at home. There's a video link at the bottom. The science research about walking, half an hour of walking, incredibly important. Some of us now are working long hours behind the screen. Physiologists say that we should be moving every 30 minutes. Every 30 minutes we get up, we stretch, we go for a walk around the kitchen, a few minutes away from screen time, and then back to it. But what's even better is what they call green exercise, where we do some of our exercises outside. So yoga would be one, walking would be another. Also, I'd say gardening is a great therapeutic means of helping us to relax. So some of us have gardens, we've not touched it. So maybe to reduce our levels of stress, get involved in the garden, walk around the garden, see what needs planting, see what needs weeding, incredibly important. You see the little books in the middle. I'm a believer in journaling. I've been a journaler now for 20 years. It's a space where we can write about how we feel. Most of us on this webinar this evening come from cultures where we're not really encouraged to express how we feel. Certainly for Caribbean men, African men, we don't talk about how we feel. We just press on, keep going. African women, perhaps, Caribbean women, it's about if you're mothers or nest builders, just keep going on. We've got things to do. But expressing emotions, incredibly important on many, many levels. But the journals are a great way of putting on paper what we're feeling. Lots of research on writing, reducing levels of stress, blood pressure, anxiety, nervousness. Lots of research on writing and people recovering from operations, writing and people recovering in terms of reducing the symptoms of IBS. Writing is incredibly important. And I'm sure with the amount of people that might be listening, there may be one or two of you, when you were at school, you wrote poetry. And I would say to you, if you've stopped, get your pens out again, get your paper, start writing poetry, start writing short stories, because it will help you to relax and to recover during this time. You see my friend in the bottom left hand, sleep, really, really important. Even though there's a lot might be going on, but getting our rest is really important. One of the things I've not mentioned, one of the things about expressing our emotions is that if we suppress emotions, especially unpleasant emotions, it damages our immune system. So then it makes us susceptible to disease, illness, and so forth. So if we're tired, not talking about our emotions, recovering from stress, the bit that we can't see, but really important in our bodies, the immune system or the floating brain, incredibly important. Diet, incredibly important. Dr. Chichi made comments about how important diet is. I'm not promoting vegetarianism or veganism, but be very careful in terms of what we eat. When we're under a lot of stress, three things that go: rest, exercise, and diet. They're the three things that we need the most. And it's the three things that suffer. So diet's important, not just food, But what we see, I'd certainly say to individuals, don't spend a lot of time listening to the news. It's depressing. Listen to the news 5 or 10 minutes, social media, get off it. Do something else to occupy your time and your mind. A lot of the things that we're hearing on the news at the moment is really, really depressing. So best not to spend too much time on it. And the final corner, and this is really important, sitting still. You would think that being busy, we have this thing about rushing, wanting to sort things out, put the fires out. Sometimes we have to, but you can't beat being still, being conscious of breathing and so forth. So I've said to individuals, if you're working from home, get up in the morning, have your shower, have your breakfast. Women, put on your makeup. Don't blank the screen out because you've not done your hair. Put your makeup on. If you wear a hairpiece, put it on, fix it on properly, and present yourself to the world. Dress in your good clothes. I'm dressed in decent clothes today. The only thing that I've not got on is me street shoes. I got slippers on. But other than that, dress for the day as if you're going to go to work. For those of us about stillness, mindfulness, incredibly important. For those of you that have a religious background where you take faith seriously, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Sikhism, Hinduism, within all these religious structures, there are places where we can be still. Prayer, meditation, contemplation, silence, solitude, about developing our spirituality, but also it's slowing us down, especially during a crisis, especially times of difficulty. It slows us down so we can think and be reflective. And maybe during the time of stillness and reflective, we get an answer that we can use for our business as we move forward. Next slide, please. Okay, the tree that in the earlier slide, you're supporting all this stuff. Not many people supporting you, either your GP or friends or a counsellor or somebody, a group of business people where you check in with each other each week to make sure everybody's okay. If we don't have those support systems, what happens when things happen, we blow over. But this is the thing. We don't just affect ourselves. Look at the tree, it's crashed into the house. We affect other people around us. We affect our partners, our children, extended family, our friends. If we are not functioning well, our business won't function well. Incredibly important, the whole thing about self-care and looking after ourselves. So, so, so important. Next slide, please. Okay, this is my picture of my father. He came across from Jamaica in 1953. He was a builder's joiner. And the night before I started British Telecom in 1979, September, he said to me in a very mild Jamaican patois, which I will not repeat this evening, and when my father said to me, Delroy, listen to my stupid advice, which is an oxymoron, isn't it? He meant, listen, this is what he said, Delroy, always do a good day's work, but don't kill yourself. 2 days after you're gone, they will have found somebody else to replace you. And my dad died at a young age, 30 odd years ago at 53, but I've never, ever forgotten those words. So whilst we're pursuing our business, great, but don't kill yourself in the process. As I was thinking about this today, I'll share something with you. When I was doing my PhD, there was a young woman she was doing a PhD with, in fact, she worked too hard. And I used to say to her, listen, take time, because there's no point getting your PhD and you're so unwell that you can't enjoy it. Age 33, she developed breast cancer, and 4 years later, she died 3 days away from submitting a PhD, did all that work, long, ridiculous hours, and wasn't alive to submit it. And I don't know where the work is now. So it's really important that we look after ourselves as best we can. Next slide, please. Okay, that's it. Nearly finished. Self-care is not selfish. You cannot serve from an empty vessel. So the question is, after our time together, very, very quick, what will you do to care for yourself better? Next slide. I think that's the final slide. Next slide. Thank you. Last one. Yeah, okay. They are some of the references that you can use that help you along in terms of writing, stress management, and the reference at the bottom. Thank you very, very much indeed. I think there might be another slide. Is there another slide? Just check. Yeah, that's right. That's my details. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for this time to share just a few things. Looking forward to the questions and the dialogue, and with my colleague, Dr. Chichi, and hopefully straight to you, Dr. Dr. Shania.
I wish I was a doctor, but thank you so much, Dr. Delroy. That was fantastic. I hope you can all hear me this time. I think who'd have known that in 2020 you're on mute was probably going to be the most used phrase that we'd ever say. So apologies again for that mistake of mine. So now it's time for the Q&A. I will take the liberty of asking the first question to give you all some time to think about any questions that you want to type. I can see that there's one already, but we'll come to that in a second. So the first question I just want to ask is, with regards to, I guess, well-being and the focus on it, it's something that's been increasingly focused on over the past few years. But as you've both sort of mentioned, within certain communities, it can still be quite a taboo subject. And so what I want to ask is, for people who aren't used to thinking about their mental health or even prioritizing it, how do you best communicate to others that, to use an oft-used phrase, that it's okay not to be okay?
Dr. Chichi, you want to go first?
Absolutely, I'll go first. I mean, what I say to patients, often patients come to me with physical problems like a chest infection or a broken toe, a broken foot. And when they present to me with a mental health challenge or a psychological challenge, I say to them, look, mental health is equally as important as physical health. It's like having a chest infection. You know, sometimes we might need to give you medication. Sometimes we might need to signpost you to further therapy that will help you to recover. So I encourage my patients to think about their whole self holistically, because actually what we do see is there is a huge relationship with physical health and mental health and vice versa. So a patient may present to me with a terrible migraine or repeated headaches or weight loss or something else, a rash. And actually, it's because they're depressed. It's because they're stressed. So I encourage patients to look at their whole life and to talk and to just let us tease out what's happening. By all means, keep a diary of your mood. It's really, really important. So I think we just need to talk more about mental health and recognize the huge impact.
Thank you.
Dr. Delroy, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think one of the things for some cultures, of course, men can see counselling as a form of weakness. What I say to individuals, before you hit the crisis, there are signs along the way. And one of the slides I spoke about was listening. We need to listen to those signs. When you get to a crisis, you can recover, but the recovery is a lot longer. You can wait for the crisis. You'll be off work for months, on tablets for a long time and so forth. But if you listen to those signs, take the courage and find somebody certainly to talk to, whether it's a counsellor or it's a friend. One of the things I have with, I'll talk about some Caribbean men, some men, we will spend thousands on a car. And the minute you drive the car out of the showroom, it is depreciated in thousands. But we won't spend a few £100s to someone who might help us work through some of the issues that will help us to function, to have lives. So it is about talking, as Dr. Chichi said. There's no way around it. But talk before you hit the crisis. Talk before you hit the crisis.
Thank you so much. There's a couple of comments about having access to the information and also potentially catching this from the beginning. So the link that you clicked to join the webinar, that link this is being recorded and that link will be valid. So you can, if you want to watch back or see any of the information again, then you can use that. So I'm going to come to a question from Venus. I think this one's specifically for you, Dr. Delroy, but the question is, are you suggesting that journaling is therapeutic simply by releasing the thoughts and maybe reviewing again later?
Oh, don't get me started. That's exactly what I'm saying. Lots of research on journaling. In fact, I use it personally, but I use it with clients as well. I recall a manager at Sheffield Hallam University quite a few years ago. And I can't remember what the issues were, but I suggested that he did some journaling. I was quite specific. So he came out the following week and he said to me, I'll be honest with you, I was really reluctant to do it. But so I thought I'd give it a go. And he said, I was pleasantly surprised to what happened and how I felt. So the whole process is, there's a big debate about whether handwriting or going on the computer. There is something about the brain, touch. So I still handwrite. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. Had I not been able to journal, I know I would have been hospitalized over the years. But journaling was a place where I could write down things. And the great thing about the paper doesn't talk back to you and say, you can't say that, you can't think like that. Why on earth should you think like that? It just receives what you give it with no condemnation, no judging. So it's just a way that you can use, a very powerful way to deal with some very, very unpleasant emotions that we all feel from time to time. So yeah, journaling, it's my thing. I've been doing it for 20 years. Fantastic.
Can I also add about colouring in, mindful colouring?
Yes.
You know, I find that really, really helpful, especially when you're out in nature, and you could just colour in and just create beautiful artwork. And it's, as Dr. Delroy said, it's about just having that space, that time to reflect. And often our lives are so busy, so packed that we never have that time to just absolutely stop. As businesses, as entrepreneurs, you're rushing from one thing to the other. And it's so vital that you take time and pause and do something creative.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Sort of links to our next question, actually, which comes from Cheryl. It's, as business owners, we often feel that we need to be working 24/7. So what are the best ways of protecting our time in order to focus on well-being for the sake of the business, well, for the sake of ourselves and for the sake of the business?
Okay. I would say you have a diary, mark out spaces in advance. Seriously. So either time to exercise, time to read. He's now passed away, a guy called Eugene Peterson, who wrote The Message. Those of you who from the Christian tradition, he wrote The Message. And what he would do in his diary, weeks and months in advance, he would put 2-hour slots to read. He wanted to visit him. He'd look at his diary. He says, no, I have an appointment. And the appointment was reading a book. So self-care thing, you have to be intentional about it. Have a diary. You block out the time. I also do ministerial supervision, and I spoke to a minister the first session we had, and I looked about rest and so forth, and I topped it up, and he was working 114 hours a week. When I told him, he was shocked, and that was the first month. And when we met the second month, he said to me that what I said to him shocked him that much, he didn't do anything for the rest of the day. So he's really dropped his hours down significantly, and he's feeling the benefits. When things are in a crisis, we do have to do some firefighting, but actually some of our thoughts come in stillness, in quietness, when we slow right down. That's the best ideas will come. And yeah, got your diary, mark out the space weeks in advance.
And if I could add to that, Shania, as a self-professed, I do work a lot. I'm a little bit of a workaholic. It's about having people around you who observe your patterns, who observe your behavior, who observe any changes in irritability. Now, I've got really great friends, great people around me. I work with great people. And as part of the 5-2 Medics team and our allies like Dr. Delroy, they'll often see me send an email at 1 a.m. and say, Dr. Chichi, should you be awake? Dr. Delroy told me this weekend, pace yourself. So at times it's all about physician, heal thyself, take your own medicine, have people around you that you're accountable to that can say to you, stop, put it down and go and do something else. Have you slept? Did you sleep last night? Have you had a rest? Have you been to the park? So in as much as, it's about doing things personally, this is all about community resilience. We need to be there for each other to survive this after effect of the pandemic.
If I can say to the person who asked the question, this is what I don't think in the introduction it was said. I've been a pastor for 30 years. I finished 2 years ago. And for about the last 15 years of that time, when I got a diary for the new year, I got the diary September, October time. The first thing that went in was my day off on a Friday. for the whole year. So yeah, culturally, certainly Caribbean people, we have lots of funerals on the Friday, but Friday was my day off. So a typical day would be, I go to the market early. I don't go to the market with my wife. She takes too long. I'm in the market and out within 5 minutes. I know where I'm going. So that's me. Go home, unpack everything, and then I go into what I did. Obviously, things have changed now significantly. I then went into a coffee shop. I stayed into a coffee shop 4 or 5 hours, just sat on my own, no phone, or if I had the phone, it wasn't on, or if I did, it was listening to music, reading, journaling. That was my downtime where my body was still, where I'd people watch, and our bodies need that. It really, really need it. Really, really need it. So plan ahead, plan ahead.
Absolutely.
Thank you. We've had another question from Paula. What happens if something that you like comes up as an emergency that you need to deal with that maybe was, I guess, maybe in the pre-scheduled downtime, or if it's on top of a lot of other things that you need to deal with? What in terms of having that added stress, what can we do to help alleviate that?
Sure. I think it depends on what it is, of course. You have to deal with things there and then, but still make sure that you get the space to. We're under a lot of stress. We need time to recover, and I think one of the things that we underestimate how long it takes to recover. You have to deal with the crisis. You have to deal with it. Remember, as a pastor, we're dealing with crisis all the time, but it was, for me, that was non-negotiable. It really was non-negotiable, and better still, if I wasn't preaching the Sunday. Look, I'm going to be honest now. Not every Saturday. Some Saturdays I spend the whole day in my pajamas. I weren't going anywhere. I weren't preaching on Sunday. And so Saturday I was at home with my family in my pajamas the whole day, and it was relaxing. These are some of the things you have to do. So deal with the crisis, but make sure you might then have to change the diary around, even change some appointments. Something's come up. And one of the things, I'll just finish on this. There were some times I came in, I was very tired. Somebody would phone and say, can I talk with you? I would say, no, I'm really tired and I can't give you the attention that you need. Can you call? Can you rearrange for 2 or 3 days? Nobody ever complained at that. Sometimes when we're running business, we think that we've got to be doing stuff all the time, but actually it's really important if we kind of look after ourselves and rearrange some things. Say something has cropped up, it's put my diary out. You don't have to tell them what it is, but something may have just cropped up. I need to deal with it. Can we reschedule?
Absolutely. I think that I often say to my patients when they feel that they're at the sort of center of everything, holding things together, is that, as Dr. Delroy said, you're replaceable. Your health matters. You can't get that back. There are certain things that affect your health that it's impossible to retrieve once you've gone past that limit. So it's about being self-aware. It's about understanding when you have to say no. It's about understanding when you have to look after yourself. You have to put yourself first. You've mentioned it's a crisis, but a crisis for who? Is it a crisis for you? Is it an emergency for you? Is it an emergency for the other person, or for your community, or for the business? So there are times you just have to stop, because once you've keeled over and, had a breakdown, that's many months of recovery. So it's important that we learn to be extremely self-aware.
As you said, prevention is better than cure in this.
Absolutely.
Got a couple more questions. So we've got one from Lee Redman. Are there any retreat type centres available that you know of that someone could attend post lockdown for help?
Wow, that's a packed question. I think that it's understanding because retreat centres, some of them are charity, some of them are businesses as well. But it's understanding how these are operating as we ease out of lockdown, in terms of restrictions, in terms of the number of people they can have at one time. But there are many retreat centres, either the faith-based, or for mindfulness, or for spirituality, or for healing. There are a lot, and that's something that we can certainly signpost people to organisations that run these retreats. But I can't give a definite answer, because I know that business or life has changed for a lot of people, and people are actively considering how they operate and reopen. It's a difficult time. It's a very difficult time for those types of organizations. Don't know if you know of any, Dr. Delroy, that are up and running.
Yeah, well, there's a place I normally go to in Birmingham, which is the Woodbrook Study Centre, and I went online days ago because I like to spend a few days there. It looks like they're taking people, but I've not called anybody to find out how things are. But as you rightly said, things have changed on end. What I do know, a friend of mine, she did a mindfulness retreat online.
Okay.
She wasn't sure whether it would work or not, but she said it was brilliant. Now, what I can do, only ask her. I can forward the link to yourself, Shania. I think everywhere having to rethink how they do things and so forth. I'm not. I think whatever I knew before, I would say now that there's lots of changes. But one place I've gone, I've gone many times, is Woodbrook Study Centre, which is in Birmingham. And if you Google it, the information will come up. And for them to see if they are taking people.
Thank you so much, Dr. Delroy. Sorry, Nkem, I will try to find your question again. While I look for it, there's one, we have another question from Venus. So many of the things I normally do for self-care is unavailable or more risky than I prefer. What alternatives might you suggest?
Well, it depends what you're doing, I suppose.
The word risky.
That's right. Yeah, risky. That's kind of local term, that is. So it just depends. So, for example, when I did a similar workshop with NHS staff, and there's somebody who said that she used to go to the gym 5 days a week, and she now don't have the motivation. Partly the lack of motivation that people are feeling is to do with the lockdown, and our body is producing more cortisol than normal. So brain fog, so people have lost motivation. So you have to make yourself do it to the point where it's almost boring. So it might mean you do a lot more walks. It might mean that you do your exercises at home. That's some circuit training. Is it Jim Wick or Joe Wick?
Joe Wick.
Joe Wick. So there might be other things you can do. Depends what risk is though. So I feel like mountain or skydiving at the moment might be the right thing. But yeah, some things that you can do at home, because there's lots we can do at home. We can do training at home. Certainly walks. I run and I cycle. Swimming I can't do at the moment because pools are pretty much closed. So yeah, it just depends what before.
For me, sorry,
please.
Risky in the sense of cleanliness or precaution, like she likes to do nails, gym, karaoke, massage. Not
okay.
Okay.
Thanks for the clarification.
For me, I love to travel. I love to see the world. I love to see different cultures. That's part and parcel of how I relax as a clinician. I put these things in my diary from a year before. I start mapping out and planning where I'm going to travel with the family, with the children. Now, 2020, that's been obliterated. I can't plan in that regard. But what I have done is I've put some things in the diary already for 2021. I've started to make plans. I've started to make bookings to support businesses, to support local businesses and businesses far and wide. But for me, it's given me hope, and that's what I'm clinging on to.
Absolutely.
There's a saying that says, hope deferred makes the heart sick. And I was beginning to feel overwhelmed by the isolation and just the loss of my dreams and things that I do. So by actually putting those things in the diary and going further by making those bookings, I've just got hope for the rest of the year. I can hold on until next year. And then I could do those things that I enjoy that are riskier now, but next year hopefully should be less risky.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Venus, just in terms of the things that you enjoy around nails, karaoke in the gym, those are all things I enjoy too. So I'm here with you.
Look at her shoes.
Karaoke, YouTube does some great karaoke background. I sing by myself in my house, and maybe nails, we just have to do them ourselves until we can get out.
Sure.
Sorry, Nkem, I'm sorry that I missed your question. So in response, yes, I can share the slides with you, but I'm sorry, I thought I'd answered it earlier. The video will also be available for the info that's been discussed today, so you can rewatch it back later. But I can also share the slides with you, which I will do in the next few days. Thank you so much again, Dr. Chichi and Dr. Dalroy. This has been...
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Enjoyed it. And I'm sure if our audience could be in the room with us, you'd be hearing a massive round of applause right now.
Right.
Thank you also to everybody who joined us today. I just want to say again, that we've got more of these Powering Our Communities webinars coming up over the next few months. The next one will be in conversation with Guillaume Power, who's the founder and CEO of TLC Lions and the Unwind Experience, and who was also listed in the 2020 Empower Top 100 Ethnic Minority Executives. So I'll be grilling him on his experiences, what he's learned, and also his tips for success and building a successful business. So if that's interesting to you, then please register to join me on the 12th of August. And without further ado, I'd just like to say thank you again and stay safe and stay blessed, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yes, indeed.